I took my wife to a club. She let another man touch her playfully, danced with him, kissed him, and followed him home. She called me at 2 a.m. crying. What did you add to my lubricant? My name's Julian Cross, and I used to think I was the reasonable kind of husband. You know, the guy who doesn't lose his mind when his wife wants a girls' night out or decides to grab drinks with her work friends. I was that enlightened, modern husband who'd say things like, "Go have fun, I trust you," without a trace of irony or that weird which thing some married dudes develop after a few years. I thought I had this whole marriage thing figured out, like I'd cracked some secret code that other guys were too insecure or possessive to understand. Turns out, I wasn't enlightened at all. I was just blissfully, stupidly unaware that my entire understanding of trust was about to get drop-kicked into oblivion by a Friday night that started with good intentions and ended with me questioning every decision I'd made since I picked out an engagement ring. That illusion of being Mr. Cool Husband shattered spectacularly the night I took my wife Maya to a place called Vibe District, which is one of those clubs that tries way too hard to be exclusive and ends up just being expensive. You know the type, velvet ropes outside, a bouncer named Thor or Dwayne who looks like he eats protein powder for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and a cover charge that makes you wonder if they're also selling you a timeshare in the VIP section. It's the kind of establishment where the drinks cost more than your dignity. Everyone smells like a confusing mixture of money and catastrophically bad decisions. And the lighting is so moody you can't tell if that's a celebrity in the corner or just some guy who owns a vape shop and has really good PR. We went to celebrate Maya's promotion at the marketing firm where she works, which was legitimately a big deal and something I was genuinely proud of her for achieving. She'd been busting her ass for months, pulling late nights, dealing with clients who thought brand synergy was an actual sentence, and navigating office politics that would make Machiavelli say, "Damn, that's cold." So when she suggested we hit up Vibe District to celebrate, I figured why not? I'm a supportive husband. I wore my good shirt, the navy blue one with the subtle pattern that I thought made me look sophisticated and put together. Maya took one look at me and said, "Ah, babe, you look like a dad trying to be cool." And there it was. The truth delivered with a kiss on the cheek and a smile that said she loved me anyway. Spoiler alert, that's exactly what I was. A 34-year-old man in business casual trying to convince himself he still had it, whatever it was supposed to be. At first, everything was genuinely fine, the kind of fine that makes you think maybe you were being paranoid about nothing. Maya looked incredible in this black dress that probably cost half my paycheck, but was absolutely worth it because she was radiant, confident, like she owned the entire club, and everyone in it was just a guest in her world. She danced with me, laughed at my terrible attempts at whatever the hell people were doing on that dance floor that was definitely not dancing by any traditional definition, and ordered what I can only describe as too many cocktails with names like Liquid Temptation and 7 Deadly Sips that came in glasses shaped like things you probably shouldn't drink out of. The bartender, this guy with a man bun and sleeve tattoos who looked like he'd just finished a shift at our artisanal coffee shop, kept giving her these knowing smiles like they were sharing an inside joke about how basic I looked standing there with my beer that cost $14. $14 for one beer. Then, like clockwork in every bad rom-com where the husband is about to learn a valuable lesson about trust and boundaries, this guy showed up. His name was Darren, which I learned approximately 45 seconds after he materialized next to Maya, like he'd been summoned from the gym bro dimension, where everyone communicates exclusively through protein shake recommendations and unsolicited fitness advice. Darren was exactly the kind of guy who introduces himself by somehow making every muscle in his body flex simultaneously, like he was trying to intimidate you on a cellular level. He had that look, you know the one, tank top tight enough to be a health hazard, arms that suggested he'd never met a bicep curl he didn't like, and that particular brand of confidence that comes from spending 6 hours a day at the gym and thinking that translates to personality. Within 30 seconds of approaching Maya, he called her Queen Energy, which is apparently what passes for a pickup line in 2025, and I watched my wife transform before my eyes into a giggling teenager who'd just been noticed by the captain of the football team. I stood there, beer in hand, trying to figure out exactly when I'd become invisible, watching Darren lean in close to Maya, his mouth moving in what I'm sure he thought was charming conversation, but looked more like a sales pitch for a pyramid scheme where the product is his own ego. Maya was eating it up, laughing at things that definitely weren't that funny, touching his arm in that casual way that's never actually casual, her whole body language shifting from wife out with husband to woman who forgot she left a husband standing 6 feet away, holding a $14 beer and his shattered self-esteem. When I finally worked up the nerve to say something, to gently suggest that maybe she was getting a little close to this dude who looked like he'd never read a book that didn't have the word shredded in the title, Maya turned to me and laughed. Not a nervous laugh or an oops, you're right laugh. No, this was the full-throated, carefree laugh of someone who thought I was being ridiculous, dramatic, that guy who can't let his wife have a good time. Oh, come on, Jules, she said, using the nickname she only breaks out when she thinks I'm being unreasonable. We're just having fun. And there it was, those 4 words that every married person knows are the beginning of something terrible. We're just having fun. Yeah, fun. The kind of fun that makes married men stand in overpriced clubs questioning every life choice they've made since they put down that first wedding venue deposit and convinced themselves that spending $20,000 on one day was a sound financial decision. The DJ, some guy who probably went to college for audio engineering and ended up playing other people's music in a darkroom for a living, decided that exact moment was perfect to switch from upbeat pop garbage to one of those slow, grinding R&B tracks that basically serves as a soundtrack for poor decision-making. You know the kind I'm talking about, the songs with lyrics that are just barely suggestive enough to not get banned from radio, but explicit enough that everyone knows exactly what they're really about. The lights dim to that special level of darkness that clubs use specifically so people can pretend they didn't see what they absolutely saw. And suddenly Darren's hands, those gym-sculpted appendages that probably bench press more than I weigh, were everywhere they had absolutely no business being. I'm talking hands on Maya's waist, then sliding to her hips, then somehow migrating to the small of her back in a way that was definitely not accidental or innocent or any of the things Maya would later try to claim it was. Playfully, she'd probably call it, because apparently in 2025 we've redefined the word playful to include basically dry humping a stranger while your husband watches from a distance that feels simultaneously too close and not close enough. Darren was leaning in, whispering something in her ear that made her throw her head back and laugh like he'd just delivered the punchline to the world's funniest joke, when really he probably said something devastatingly unoriginal like, "You move like a professional," or some other line he'd workshopped in the mirror between sets of lateral raises. I stood there in my dad trying to be cool shirt, clutching my overpriced beer like it was a life preserver, and I was drowning in an ocean of my own inadequacy, officially becoming the world's most awkward background extra in the movie of my own marriage. You ever have one of those moments where you're physically present, but emotionally you've already left your body and you're watching everything from above like some kind of out-of-body experience, except instead of seeing heaven, you're just seeing your wife grinding on a guy named Darren? That was me. That was my Friday night. Everyone around us was cheering, hooting, hollering like they were at a sporting event, and Maya had just scored the winning touchdown. Their phones held high, capturing my complete and total humiliation in glorious 4K resolution for posterity and probably TikTok. There was this woman next to me, probably mid-20s, with one of those hairstyles that requires a YouTube tutorial and 3 hours to achieve, who literally looked at me with pity and mouthed, "I'm so sorry," like she was offering condolences at a funeral. Because that's what it was, really. A funeral for my dignity, my trust, my naive belief that my wife wouldn't turn into a completely different person after 3 cocktails with names that sounded like rejected romance novel titles. Some guy in a suit that probably cost more than my car payment bumped into me and didn't even apologize, too busy filming the spectacle with his phone, probably already thinking about the caption, "Bro watching his girl get stolen in real time," with a bunch of crying laughing emojis. When I finally found my voice somewhere between my bruised ego and my mounting rage, I managed to say, "Maya, maybe tone it down," which in retrospect was possibly the most pathetic string of words ever assembled in the English language. Tone it down. Like she was a stereo playing too loud and not a married woman essentially auditioning for a music video about infidelity. She turned to look at me, and I saw it, that look. You know the one I'm talking about, because if you've ever been in a relationship, you've definitely seen it. It's the "you're ruining the vibe" look that women have perfected over generations. The same expression that says, "I can't believe you're being like this right now," without having to waste actual words on your unreasonable concerns. It's the look women save specifically for men who have the audacity to remind them that they're married, and that marriage traditionally comes with certain boundaries like, I don't know, not letting random gym bros put their hands all over you. Maya leaned in close enough that I could smell her perfume mixed with whatever sugary garbage was in those cocktails, and whispered, "You're too uptight, babe. It's just a dance. Just a dance." Those 3 words that have probably preceded every affair, every divorce, every moment where someone tried to gasoline their way out of accountability by pretending physics didn't exist. Oh sure, Maya. It's just a dance. Just like the Titanic was just a boat ride. Just like Chernobyl was just a minor equipment malfunction. Just like every disaster in human history started with someone saying, "It's just," and following it up with a massive understatement. It's just a dance the same way arson is just warmth, the same way a hurricane is just wind, the same way my marriage was apparently just a suggestion. Darren was grinning now, this smug expression that suggested he knew exactly what he was doing and was thoroughly enjoying making another man uncomfortable in a public setting. He pulled Maya closer, and she let him, her body molding against his in a way that made me want to pour my $14 beer over both of them and storm out like some kind of dramatic hero in a movie, except I'd probably just look like an angry dad who couldn't control his emotions at a nice establishment. The music kept thumping, this bass-heavy rhythm that felt like it was mocking me, each beat a reminder that I was watching my marriage dissolve on a dance floor that probably hadn't been properly cleaned since the Obama administration. Then it happened. The moment that would later be replayed on phones across the city, dissected in group chats, turned into memes and cautionary tales. Darren leaned in, and Maya didn't pull away. She didn't hesitate. She didn't remember that she had a husband standing 15 feet away having an internal crisis. She just leaned in too, and their lips met in what can only be described as a full, camera-ready, tongue-included kiss that would make rom-com directors say, maybe pull it back a bit. We're trying to keep this PG-13. The crowd absolutely erupted like someone had hit a buzzer in a game show called Destroy Your Marriage Live, complete with confetti and a studio audience losing their collective minds. People were screaming, laughing, recording. One guy literally gave Darren a high five like he'd just accomplished something impressive instead of just having basic human decency bypass him entirely. I felt my brain short-circuit, all my thoughts colliding into each other like a multi-car pileup on a highway of disbelief. Part of me wanted to march over there and make a scene, flip tables, throw drinks, do all the things that angry husbands do in movies that always seem justified until you're actually in the moment and realize you'll just end up on TMZ or worse, Reddit. Another part of me wanted to pretend I hadn't seen it, to gaslight myself into believing this was all a misunderstanding, that Maya would come back over any second now with an explanation that somehow made sense. But the largest part of me, the part that was tired and hurt and suddenly very aware that I was wearing a shirt my wife had basically mocked, knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't yell, didn't flip tables, or throw my overpriced beer or challenge Darren to some kind of ridiculous masculinity contest in the parking lot. I simply set my beer down on the nearest surface, took one last look at my wife kissing another man while strangers cheered and documented the whole thing for internet posterity, and walked out. Just walked right out of Vibe District, past the bouncer who looked at me with something resembling sympathy, past the line of people still waiting to get in who had no idea they were about to enter a club where someone's marriage had just died. Because here's what I'd learned in my 34 years on this planet. Silence hits harder than any punchline, any dramatic speech, any confrontation. Silence is the period at the end of a sentence you didn't know you were writing. I made it home sometime around midnight, which sounds dramatic until you realize I spent 45 minutes sitting in my car in the club parking lot having what I can only describe as a full-blown existential crisis set to the muffled bass of whatever garbage the DJ was playing inside. My Uber driver, a guy named Hassan who had one of those air fresheners that smelled like a pine tree had a baby with a chemical factory, tried to make small talk about traffic and weather, blissfully unaware that he was driving a man whose entire understanding of his marriage had just been shattered by a gym bro named Darren and 3 cocktails with sexually suggestive names. I gave him 5 stars anyway because honestly, what was I going to do? Take out my marital problems on his rating? The man was just trying to make a living, not provide therapy for heartbroken husbands. When I got to our apartment, the one Maya and I had spent 3 weekends painting after we moved in because we were too cheap to hire professionals and too optimistic about our combined handyman skills, I did what any rational person would do. I poured myself a glass of whiskey that was probably too expensive to be drinking alone on a Friday night, sat on the couch that we'd fought about buying because Maya wanted the white one and I correctly predicted it would be impossible to keep clean, and stared at the wall like it might suddenly offer me some kind of cosmic explanation for what the hell had just happened. The apartment felt different somehow, like knowing your wife was out there somewhere, possibly still with Captain Biceps, fundamentally changed the molecular structure of your living space. I must have dozed off at some point because I woke up to my phone buzzing angry and insistent on the coffee table, the kind of buzzing that suggests whoever's calling has tried multiple times and is not going to stop until you answer or they die, whichever comes first. I grabbed it, squinting at the screen with one eye because opening both eyes at 2 in the morning feels like an aggressive commitment to consciousness that I wasn't ready to make. Maya's name lit up the display, along with a photo of her from our honeymoon in Cancun, where she's laughing and holding a margarita the size of her head. Back when I thought I knew everything about her, and the future seemed like this bright, uncomplicated thing that happened to other people who made worse decisions than us. I should have let it go to voicemail. I should have turned my phone off, thrown it in a drawer, gone back to sleep, and dealt with whatever fresh hell was waiting for me in the morning when I'd at least had coffee and possibly some emotional distance from watching my wife make out with a stranger. But I didn't, because apparently I'm a masochist who can't help but answer the phone when it rings, some Pavlovian response programmed into me by years of being the responsible one. The one who answers when people call, who shows up when people need him, who wears the dad trying to be cool shirt and pretends everything's fine. I answered, and immediately wished I hadn't. Maya was crying, not the gentle, movie star single tear rolling down a perfectly made-up face kind of crying, but the full, ugly, hyperventilating kind that makes people sound like they're drowning in their own emotions. But here's the thing. It wasn't the, "I'm sorry, I made a terrible mistake, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you," kind of crying that you might expect from a woman who just publicly humiliated her husband in a nightclub. No, this was the "something weird's happening to me, and I need you to fix it" kind of crying, which, if you're keeping track at home, is a completely different category of tears with wildly different implications. "Julian," she gasped between sobs that sounded like she was auditioning for a role in a soap opera about dramatic medical emergencies, "what did you add to my lubricant?" And there it was, a sentence so absurd, so completely disconnected from reality and basic logic, that my brain actually stopped processing information for a solid 5 seconds. I just sat there, phone pressed to my ear, wondering if I was still asleep, and this was some kind of stress-induced nightmare where my subconscious was trying to process betrayal through increasingly bizarre scenarios. Now, let me pause here and really break down the absolute insanity of this moment, because I need you to understand the full scope of what was happening. When your wife cheats on you in public, kisses a man whose personality can be summed up as "goes to the gym," follows him back to what I can only assume was his apartment decorated exclusively with protein powder containers and motivational posters about gains, and then calls you at 2 in the morning asking about her personal lubricant, you have officially entered a new level of absurdity where even God looks down from heaven, sees what's happening, turns to the angels, and says, "You know what? I'm going to let this one play out because I genuinely want to see where this goes." "Maya," I said, my voice still rough with sleep and confusion and the lingering taste of expensive whiskey, "I don't add things to your stuff. I add things to grocery lists. I add things to my Amazon cart. I add cream to my coffee. I do not, have never, and will never add mysterious substances to your personal items because I'm not a psychopath, and also because that thought has literally never crossed my mind in the entire duration of our relationship." I could hear her breathing on the other end, ragged and panicked, and part of me, the part that had loved her for 5 years and married her for 3, wanted to ask if she was okay, wanted to be concerned, wanted to slip back into the role of supportive husband who fixes problems. But the larger part of me, the part that was still seeing her tongue down Darren's throat every time I closed my eyes, was thinking something entirely different. No, I swear something's burning. Maya practically shrieked into the phone, her voice climbing octaves like she was training for some kind of soprano emergency. I'm in pain, Julian. Something's wrong. I feel like I'm on fire down there, and I know you did something. I know you put something in my stuff. The accusation hung in the air between us, transmitted through cellular networks and satellites, and whatever other technology allows us to have these completely unhinged conversations in the middle of the night. She was actually suggesting, with apparent sincerity, that I had somehow sabotaged her lubricant in anticipation of her cheating on me, like I was some kind of revenge mastermind who plans ahead for betrayal. Let me get this straight, I said, sitting up fully now because this conversation required my complete attention and possibly a stronger drink. You think your boring husband who you literally mocked for wearing a dad shirt tonight, somehow predicted you'd go home with the incredible bulk and preemptively tampered with your personal items? Do you hear yourself right now? Do you understand how absolutely unhinged that sounds? Maya kept crying, insisting something was wrong, that she was burning, that this couldn't be normal, and all I could think was one thing, one crystal clear thought that cut through all the noise and drama and middle-of-the-night chaos. That's karma, sweetheart, finally switching from emotional damage to physical form. That's the universe saying, "Oh, you thought you could just kiss random dudes at clubs and face no consequences? Let me introduce you to my friend, immediate regret." I didn't say that out loud, of course, because I was raised with some semblance of manners, and also because kicking someone when they're down, even someone who deserves it, felt like stooping to a level I wasn't quite ready to reach. Maya, I need you to listen to me very carefully, I said, using the same tone I'd used to explain something simple to someone very confused. I did not touch your stuff. I did not add anything, remove anything, or even look at anything in your personal drawer, because I respect boundaries and also because I literally had no reason to. Whatever's happening to you right now is not my fault, not my problem, and frankly, given that you're calling me from what I assume is another man's apartment at 2 in the morning, not really my concern anymore. The line went quiet for a moment, just the sound of her breathing and maybe some muffled talking in the background that was probably Darren asking what was wrong, completely oblivious to the comedy of errors he'd walked into. "Please," Maya whispered, and I could hear genuine fear in her voice now, underneath the tears and the accusations. "Something's really wrong. I don't know what to do." And there it was, the moment where I had to decide what kind of person I was going to be. The guy who hung up and let her figure it out herself? The guy who called her an ambulance and washed his hands of the whole situation? Or the guy who, despite everything, couldn't quite turn off the part of him that had promised to be there in sickness and in health, even when the sickness was apparently self-inflicted and the health of the marriage was already flatlined? I sighed, long and heavy, the kind of sigh that carries the weight of every poor decision that led to this exact moment. Go to the emergency room, Maya, or call your new friend Darren and see if all those muscles come with basic first aid knowledge. But stop calling me about your lubricant at 2 in the morning like I'm some kind of crisis hotline for cheaters. If you've never had the distinct pleasure of becoming the subject of citywide gossip, let me tell you, it's exactly as fun as it sounds, which is to say not fun at all. By Monday morning, approximately 63 hours after my marriage imploded on a dance floor in front of phones that apparently had better recording quality than most professional cameras, the story had grown legs, arms, and possibly a viral marketing campaign. I'm talking full-blown telephone game on steroids, where the original story of wife kisses guy at club had somehow morphed into various increasingly absurd versions, including wife joins cult at club, wife and guy start fight club at club, and my personal favorite, husband drugs wife's intimate products in elaborate revenge scheme, which was both creative and completely insane. I discovered the extent of my newfound fame when I stopped at my usual barbershop, the kind of old-school place with the spinning red and white pole outside and pictures of haircuts from 1987 on the wall that somehow stay relevant through sheer force of nostalgia. I'd been going to raise cuts for 5 years, long enough that my barber, Eddie, knew my usual trim, my thoughts on the local basketball team's chances this season, and apparently now, intimate details about my wife's Friday night adventure. I wasn't even fully through the door, hadn't even sat down in the chair that smelled like aftershave and broken dreams, when my phone buzzed with a text from Eddie himself, who was standing literally 6 feet away from me holding scissors and looking at me with the kind of pity usually reserved for terminal illness diagnoses. The text read, "Bro, is it true about the lubricant thing?" And I just stood there, phone in hand, staring at this message from a man who cuts my hair every 3 weeks and suddenly knew more about my personal life than my own parents. I looked up at Eddie, who had the decency to look somewhat embarrassed, and he just shrugged like, "Hey man, I had to ask, everyone's talking about it." Everyone. Apparently the entire city had nothing better to do on a Monday morning than discuss Julian Cross's marriage disintegrating in real time, with a side plot about allegedly tampered personal products that sounded like a rejected storyline from a bad soap opera. "No, Eddie," I said, sitting down in the chair with the resignation of a man who'd given up on dignity sometime around 2 a.m. Saturday morning. "It's not true. None of it's true. Well, except the part where my wife kissed a guy who looks like he was genetically engineered in a lab to sell protein shakes. That part's unfortunately very true." Eddie nodded sagely, like he'd seen this kind of thing before, which, knowing his clientele of divorced dads and guys going through midlife crises, he probably had. He started cutting my hair while carefully avoiding eye contact in the mirror, which I appreciated because the last thing I needed was to watch someone watch me have feelings about my crumbling marriage. By the time I got to work at Henderson and Associates, the accounting firm where I'd spent the last 7 years crunching numbers and slowly losing my will to live in the most financially stable way possible, I'd received 14 texts, 6 calls from numbers I didn't recognize, and a Facebook friend request from someone named Drama Alert News, which I declined on principle. The office, normally a haven of boring spreadsheet discussion and arguments about the thermostat that Janet from HR kept setting to Arctic temperatures, had apparently transformed into a gossip hub where the main topic of discussion was my personal tragedy. I made it exactly 12 feet from the elevator to my desk before Tina Chun, my coworker who sat 2 cubicles over and had a concerning addiction to true crime podcasts, intercepted me with a coffee and the kind of expression people wear when they're about to say something they think is helpful, but definitely isn't. Tina was well-meaning, the kind of person who brought homemade cookies to the office and remembered everyone's birthdays, but she also had the subtlety of a fire alarm and the gossip filter of a tabloid magazine. "Hey, Julian," she whispered, which was pointless because in an office with cubicles, whispering just makes everyone else strain harder to hear what you're saying. "Just know, we all support you. What Maya did was completely unacceptable, and if you need to talk or I don't know, key her car or something, I'm here for you." She patted my shoulder with genuine sympathy, and I noticed at least 4 other heads pop up over cubicle walls like prairie dogs sensing drama. Support me. This wasn't a funeral, though honestly it might as well have been. I could practically see the sympathy casserole recipes being Googled as we spoke. "Thanks, Tina," I managed, trying to navigate to my desk without making eye contact with anyone else, because apparently I worked in an office of people who had way too much free time and not enough interesting things happening in their own lives. But no, Dave from Receivables had to stop me, asking if I was doing okay, man. And Lauren from the marketing department, who I'd spoken to maybe 3 times in 7 years, suddenly felt the need to tell me about her own divorce and how she totally understood what I was gressing through, which I'm pretty sure was a combination of going through and processing that her brain just mashed together in excitement. My phone kept buzzing all morning like it had developed a nervous disorder. Each notification another reminder that my private life had become public entertainment. Maya had been calling, leaving voicemails that started apologetic and progressively got more desperate and slightly unhinged. "Julian, please, I need to talk to you. I don't know what happened. I was drunk. I made a mistake. I'm so sorry." Then an hour later, "Why aren't you answering? We need to discuss this like adults." Then by lunchtime, "I can't believe you're ignoring me. This is so immature. Call me back." The progression from apologetic to accusatory in the span of 4 hours was almost impressive, like watching someone speed run the 5 stages of grief, but get stuck on bargaining and anger. I was sitting at my desk, trying to focus on a spreadsheet that might as well have been written in ancient hieroglyphics for all the sense it was making to my distracted brain, when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Normally I'd ignore it, Assume it was a spam call about my car's extended warranty or some scam about unpaid taxes that the IRS definitely didn't send via random text messages. But something made me open it. Maybe curiosity, maybe stupidity, maybe just the cosmic sense that my day couldn't possibly get worse, so I might as well see what fresh hell awaited. It was a video. No message, no context, just a video file that my phone automatically started playing because I apparently had my settings wrong and technology hated me. The video quality was surprisingly good, shot on what must have been one of those new phones that cost more than my monthly rent and had cameras that could probably photograph the surface of Mars if you pointed them right. It showed the interior of Vibe District, the dance floor packed with people who all seemed to be having the time of their lives, completely unaware that they were extras in the destruction of my marriage. Then the camera found them, Maya and Darren, center stage like they were the main act in a show nobody asked for, but everyone was watching anyway. The video captured everything. Maya laughing, tossing her hair back in that way she did when she was really feeling herself, Darren's hands on her waist, then lower, then everywhere. The dancing that progressively got less dancing and more simulating activities that should require privacy and possibly a permission slip. The crowd around them cheering, encouraging, creating this bubble where apparently normal social conventions and marriage vows just didn't exist anymore. And then the kiss. In high definition, with multiple angles, because apparently several people had the same idea to document this moment for posterity. I watched my wife kiss another man, really kiss him, the kind of kiss that left no room for interpretation or excuses about it didn't mean anything, or I was just drunk. This was intentional, enthusiastic, the kind of kiss that makes single people in the audience either cheer or feel lonely, and makes married men watching their wives do it feel like they're having an out-of-body experience where their soul leaves and goes somewhere quieter, maybe a library or a monastery. The video was 2 minutes and 37 seconds long, which I know because I watched the entire thing twice, some masochistic part of me needing to see it again to confirm that yes, this had really happened. This wasn't some elaborate prank or deep fake or stress-induced hallucination. The timestamp showed Friday night, 11:47 p.m., approximately 13 minutes before I walked out of that club and apparently out of my marriage. Someone had added text at the bottom, Vibe District getting wild fire, with emojis that felt deeply inappropriate given the context. I checked the view count, which was displayed right there in the corner like this was some kind of entertainment metric and not the death of my relationship. 12,000 views. 12,000. In less than 63 hours, 12,000 people, strangers I would never meet, had watched my wife cheat on me. The comments section, which I absolutely should not have opened but did anyway because apparently I hated myself, was a mixture of damn that's crazy, feel bad for the husband, and inexplicably, several people debating whether the song choice was appropriate for that level of grinding. I sat there, in my cubicle at Henderson & Associates where the most exciting thing that usually happened was someone bringing donuts on Friday, staring at my phone screen showing a video that had somehow become internet famous in half a week. 12,000 views and climbing. My marriage had gone viral, become a cautionary tale, turned into content for people eating lunch and scrolling through their feeds looking for entertainment. I was internet famous now, except instead of being the guy who did something cool or funny, I was the guy whose wife made out with Captain Biceps while he stood there in his dad's shirt, holding an overpriced beer. Tina appeared over my cubicle wall again, and I quickly closed my phone. You okay? You look pale. I looked up at her concerned face and realized I had two options, laugh or cry. I chose option 3. Return to my spreadsheet and pretend numbers made sense even though nothing else in my life currently did. If you've never experienced the joy of having your personal life dissected in a family group chat, let me paint you a picture of what that particular circle of hell looks like. Family group chats are already a minefield of unsolicited opinions, questionable memes that your aunt thinks are hilarious, and photographs of meals that nobody asked to see. But when you throw in a public cheating scandal that's been viewed 12,000 times and counting, it transforms into a full-blown digital courtroom where everyone suddenly has a law degree from the University of I Told You So. The Cross Family Chat, creatively named Cross Fam Red Heart by my mom who discovered emojis approximately 2 years ago and has been using them with the enthusiasm of someone who just learned a new language, exploded around 3 in the afternoon on Monday. I was still at work, still pretending to care about spreadsheets while internally having what psychologists probably call a moment, when my phone started having what can only be described as a seizure. Buzz, 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 an endless stream of notifications that made my phone vibrate so aggressively across my desk that Tina looked over with concern, probably thinking I was getting emergency alerts about a natural disaster, which wasn't entirely wrong because my family had officially become a Category 5 hurricane of opinions. My mom, Patricia Cross, retired elementary school teacher and holder of strong opinions about literally everything from politics to the proper way to load a dishwasher, fired the opening shot. Julian, sweetheart, I just heard about what happened with Maya. You deserve so much better than that. I never liked her anyway. Red heart face blowing a kiss, folded hands, which was fascinating because my mom had spent the last 3 years telling everyone at her book club how lucky she was to have such a wonderful daughter-in-law and posting photos of Maya on Facebook with captions like, "My beautiful girl." But sure, Mom, you never liked her. Revisionist history at its finest. Within minutes, my sister Rebecca, who lived in Portland and worked at some tech startup that claimed to be disrupting the snack food industry, which as far as I could tell meant they sold overpriced chips to people who had too much disposable income, chimed in with, "OMG, Julian, I'm so sorry. Do you need me to come home? I can totally take time off work." Also, I always thought she was sketchy. Remember at Christmas when she said she didn't like dogs? Red flag. This was the same sister who'd been in Maya's bridal party, given a tearful speech at our wedding about how perfect we were together, and literally texted me 6 months ago asking if Maya had any single friends. But apparently now she'd always known, had always seen the signs, was basically a prophet who'd predicted this catastrophe. My dad, Robert Cross, a man of few words who communicated primarily through grunts, nods, and the occasional perfectly timed sarcastic comment, contributed exactly one thing to the conversation. Thumbs up. Just a thumbs up emoji. No words, no elaboration, no sorry son, or we're here for you, or any of the things you might expect from a father whose son's marriage just became internet entertainment. Just a thumbs up, the universal symbol for, I acknowledge this situation exists, but I'm not getting involved because I learned a long time ago that family drama is a trap and the only winning move is not to play. I stared at that thumbs up for a solid minute, trying to decode whether it meant, good job leaving her, or I see your message, or thumbs up that you're getting divorced, or if my dad had just accidentally opened the group chat while trying to check the weather and hit the emoji button by mistake. With my father, all options were equally possible. The man had mastered the art of being physically present but emotionally unavailable since approximately 1987, and honestly, in this moment, I respected it. At least he wasn't pretending to have had opinions about Maya all along that mysteriously never surfaced until after everything went to hell. My brother Marcus, not to be confused with my lawyer friend Marcus, which was going to get confusing real quick, added his 2 cents. Dude, that video is everywhere. My buddy from college sent it to me like, "Yo, isn't this your brother's wife?" And I had to be like, "Yeah, man, that's my sister-in-law committing marriage suicide in 4K. Wild. You good though?" Marcus was 28, worked in sales for a medical supply company, and had the emotional intelligence of a golden retriever, which is to say he meant well, but had absolutely no filter or understanding of appropriate responses to traumatic situations. Then my Aunt Linda, my mom's sister who nobody had heard from in 6 months, and who only appeared in the group chat during major holidays or family catastrophes, materialized like a ghost who feeds on drama. I always said marriage was a scam invented by the diamond industry and the wedding industrial complex. Julian, you're better off. Marriage is just a piece of paper. Love is free. Have you considered polyamory? And there it was, Aunt Linda's signature move of taking any situation and somehow making it about her personal philosophy that she'd developed after her 3rd divorce and a weekend retreat in Sedona that involved crystals and way too much peyote. The messages kept coming, a relentless barrage of support, judgment, unsolicited advice, and people who barely talked to me suddenly having very strong feelings about my personal life. My cousin Jennifer sent a gif of someone throwing papers in the air with the caption, "Divorce Party," which felt premature and also weirdly celebratory. My uncle Frank, who I saw maybe once every 3 years at funerals, sent a message about how women these days don't understand commitment, which was rich coming from a man who'd been married 4 times and was currently on wife number 5. What nobody was sending was anything actually helpful. No, do you need anything? No, want to grab a beer and talk. No genuine offers of support that didn't come wrapped in judgment or I told you so energy. Just a digital pylon of people suddenly remembering every minor thing Maya had ever done that they could now retroactively label as a red flag. Remember when she wanted a destination wedding? Red flag. Remember when she got that haircut you didn't love? Red flag. Remember when she ordered her steak well done that one time? Practically a declaration of sociopathy. My phone rang, interrupting my fascinating journey through family dysfunction. Maya's mom, Lucinda, a woman who'd always been perfectly pleasant to me, but who I'd also always suspected liked me primarily because I had a stable job and health insurance. Julian, honey, I just wanted to call and talk to you about all this. Her voice had that careful quality of someone trying very hard to sound neutral while definitely having an agenda. I know what Maya did looks bad, and it was bad. Don't get me wrong, but she's not a bad person, Julian. She just made a mistake. She's my daughter, and I know her heart, and this isn't who she really is. I held the phone away from my ear for a second, looking at it like it might suddenly start making more sense. Lucinda, I said, trying to keep my voice level and failing. She kissed another man in public, followed him home, and called me at 2 in the morning to accuse me of sabotaging her personal items. That's not a mistake. That's a series of choices made over several hours with multiple opportunities to stop and think, hey, maybe this is a bad idea. I could hear her breathing on the other end, that particular mom breath that precedes a lecture about understanding and forgiveness. People make mistakes when they drink, Julian. You can't throw away 3 years of marriage over one night of poor judgment. Think about everything you've built together. Your apartment, your life, your future. Are you really going to let one mistake destroy all of that? And there it was, the classic manipulation technique of making the person who got cheated on somehow responsible for the relationship ending. Like I was the unreasonable one for not wanting to stay married to someone who made out with a gym bro while I watched. Like the real problem wasn't Maya's actions, but my reaction to those actions. Lucinda, I appreciate you calling, but I don't think we're going to agree on this. I started to say more, to explain that it wasn't just about the kiss, it was about the trust, the humiliation, the complete lack of respect. But what was the point? She was Maya's mom. She was always going to see her daughter as the victim of circumstance, alcohol, bad lighting, whatever excuse made the situation more palatable. I got it. I didn't agree with it, but I got it. I hung up without saying goodbye, which was rude, but also I was fresh out of emotional bandwidth for managing other people's feelings about my divorce. My phone immediately buzzed again. The family group chat. My mom. Who's Lucinda, and why is she calling you? Is she taking Maya's side? I'll call her right now and give her a piece of my mind. And I watched in real time as my family drama threatened to expand into inter-family warfare, complete with my mom threatening to call that woman, and my sister posting the phone emoji like she was ready to join the fight. I did what any sane person would do. I muted the group chat, opened my messages, and scrolled to Marcus. Not my brother Marcus the golden retriever, but Marcus Chun, my actual lawyer friend who I'd known since college and who'd made it through law school despite our best efforts to distract him with video games and questionable life choices. Marcus was the kind of lawyer who wore expensive suits but still quoted movies from our 20s, the rare combination of professional competence and personal loyalty that made him the exact person I needed right now. I sent him the video without context, just the link, and waited. 3 minutes later, my phone rang. Buddy, Marcus said, and I could hear him trying not to laugh. This is the easiest divorce case I've ever seen. Like, I don't even need to do anything. I could submit this video as Exhibit A, and the judge would probably just stamp the papers right there. This is so open and shut it's basically already closed. He paused. You okay though? I mean, beyond the obvious fact that this sucks. I'm fantastic, Marcus. Living the dream. My wife's internet famous. My family group chat is planning World War III, and I spent my Monday watching strangers debate my marriage in a comments section. I leaned back in my office chair, staring at the ceiling tiles that definitely had asbestos in them. When can we get started on those papers? I can have them ready by Wednesday. Julian, I'm serious. This is going to be smooth. She's got nothing. No defense, no sympathy, just a viral video and bad decisions. He hesitated. You sure you want to do this? No chance you want to try counseling, or… Marcus, she made out with a guy named Darren who wears tank tops as a personality trait. I'm sure. Maya showed up at my apartment on Tuesday evening, which I know because I'd been sitting on the couch eating cereal directly from the box like a divorced dad in a Netflix comedy, watching some documentary about penguins that I wasn't really processing because my brain was too busy replaying the last 72 hours on an endless loop of humiliation. I heard her knock, that specific pattern she'd always used when she forgot her keys, 3 quick raps followed by 2 slower ones, like some kind of secret code we developed without realizing it. For a second, I considered not answering, just sitting there in silence until she went away. But the problem with living in an apartment building with thin walls is that she could definitely hear my TV through the door playing penguin mating calls at moderate volume. I opened the door to find Maya looking like she'd been through some kind of natural disaster that specifically targeted a person's appearance and emotional stability. Her makeup was streaked down her face in dark rivers that suggested she'd been crying for either hours or days. Mascara creating these abstract art patterns on her cheeks that would probably be worth something if we could frame them and sell them as a commentary on the consequences of poor life choices. Her hair, usually perfectly styled in that way that required both professional products and YouTube tutorials, was pulled back in a messy ponytail that screamed, "I've given up on looking put together." She was wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, the universal uniform of people having emotional crises. And honestly, if I'd seen her on the street, I might not have immediately recognized her as the same confident woman who'd been grinding on Darren 3 days ago. "Julian," she said, and her voice cracked like she was trying to speak through a throat full of emotions and regret. "Please, we need to talk." She looked past me into the apartment, our apartment, the place where we'd spent 3 years building a life that apparently meant more to me than it did to her. I could see her eyes scanning the living room, probably noticing that I'd already taken down the framed photo of us from our honeymoon, the one where we're standing on a beach at sunset looking like we'd figured out something that other couples hadn't, like we were special, like we were going to be different from all the divorce statistics. I didn't invite her in immediately, just stood there in the doorway like some kind of bouncer at a club called My Dignity, trying to decide if I wanted to let her pass. Part of me wanted to slam the door, to end this conversation before it started because I knew exactly how it would go. She'd cry, apologize, make excuses, try to minimize what happened, and somehow by the end I'd be the bad guy for not being understanding enough. But another part of me, the part that had spent 3 years with this woman and still couldn't quite turn off the instinct to care about her well-being, stepped aside and let her in. Maya walked into the apartment like she was entering a museum of our former life, moving slowly, carefully, like the furniture might suddenly attack her. She sat down on the edge of the couch, the white one we'd fought about buying because I correctly predicted it would be impossible to keep clean and also apparently impossible to sit on comfortably when your marriage is ending. I remained standing, keeping distance between us, arms crossed in what body language experts would probably call defensive posturing, but what I called trying not to lose my shit in front of the woman who publicly humiliated me. "Julian, please," she started, and here came the waterworks again, fresh tears joining the dried ones and creating this complex geological formation of regret on her face. It wasn't what it looked like, and there it was, the single most predictable sentence in the history of people getting caught doing exactly what it looked like they were doing. I actually laughed, couldn't help it, a short bark of laughter that came out harsher than I intended, but also exactly as harsh as the situation deserved. "Maya," I said, and I was proud of how level my voice stayed despite the absolute circus of emotions happening internally. "You kissed a man in front of 50 people and followed him home. That's not a misunderstanding. That's not open to interpretation. That's not like looking at one of those optical illusions where some people see a duck and other people see a rabbit. This was straightforward, well-documented, literally recorded from multiple angles. That's not a misunderstanding. That's choreography. That's a performance piece titled, How to Destroy Your Marriage in 3 Easy Steps." She sobbed harder, pulling her knees up to her chest in that position people assume when they're trying to make themselves smaller. Like if she could just compact herself enough, she could disappear from this conversation entirely. "Something happened that night, Julian. I felt dizzy, my skin was burning, everything felt wrong. Maybe someone spiked my drink. Maybe someone put something in it. Maybe I wasn't in control of my actions. And here we were, arriving at the destination I predicted. The part where nothing was her fault, where she'd been victimized by circumstances beyond her control, where mysterious forces conspired to make her make out with Captain Biceps. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water because I needed to do something with my hands other than gesture wildly at the absurdity of what I was hearing, and leaned against the counter. Maya, you weren't roofied. You were drunk. There's a difference. Being drunk doesn't mean you weren't responsible for your actions. It just means you did things you maybe wouldn't have done sober, which honestly makes it worse because it means some part of you wanted to do those things and alcohol just removed the social filters that were keeping you from doing them. She looked up at me with red, puffy eyes that would probably need about 17 hours of sleep and a team of skincare professionals to recover. Maybe someone put something in my stuff, in my lubricant. Maybe that's why I felt weird, why everything hurt later. She was grasping at straws now, trying to construct a narrative where she was the victim of some elaborate sabotage plot instead of just someone who made terrible choices at a nightclub on a Friday night. I set my water down, hard enough that it made a sound that punctuated my next words. You mean the warming gel that your friend left at our place? The one with cinnamon oil that literally says, warming sensation, on the label in letters big enough that you could read them from space? That's what happened, Maya. You grabbed the wrong tube in your rush to hook up with Darren, and you paid the price. That's not sabotage. That's not a conspiracy. That's just you not reading labels and experiencing the natural consequences of your actions, which seems to be a theme lately. She flinched like I'd hit her, and I immediately felt that familiar guilt creeping in, that instinct to soften my words, to be gentler, to prioritize her feelings over my own hurt. But I fought it back because for once, just once, I deserved to be angry without apologizing for it. For once, my feelings got to matter more than managing hers. You're being cruel, she whispered, like cruelty was exclusive to the person pointing out facts rather than the person who created this entire situation. I'm being honest, I corrected. There's a difference. Cruel would be if I sent that video to your boss, to your friends, to everyone in your contact list. Cruel would be if I posted about this on social media with detailed commentary. Cruel would be if I did any of the 1,000 petty revenge things I've thought about over the last 3 days. Honest is me telling you that what you did was inexcusable, that no amount of alcohol or bad decisions or burning sensations changes the fact that you cheated on me, publicly, enthusiastically, while I watched. I moved to the window, looking out at the street below where normal people were having normal Tuesday evenings, walking dogs, coming home from work, completely unaware that 3 floors up a marriage was having its final conversation. You know what the worst part is, Maya? It's not even the kiss. I mean, the kiss was bad, don't get me wrong. The kiss made me want to dissolve into the floor and never exist again. But the worst part was watching you laugh, watching you light up around him in a way you haven't lit up around me in months. The worst part was realizing that you were having more fun with a stranger who called you Queen Energy than you'd had with your husband in I don't even know how long. Maya stood up, took a step toward me, reaching out like she might touch my arm, try to bridge the physical distance that represented the emotional chasm between us. Julian, I love you. I made a horrible mistake, but I love you. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. We can. No, I said, and the finality in my voice surprised even me. We can't. Because fixing this would require me to forget what I saw, to unhear what I heard, to delete the video that 12,000 people have watched, to somehow convince myself that this was just a one-time thing and not a symptom of something fundamentally broken. And I can't do that, Maya. I won't do that. I deserve better than spending the rest of my life wondering if every time you go out you're going to find another Darren, another excuse, another way to make me feel like this. She was full-on sobbing now, the kind of crying that comes from realizing you've lost something you didn't appreciate until it was gone. Please, Julian, please don't do this. I'm begging you. I'll do anything. I'll change. I'll be better. I'll never drink again. You'd need more than therapy. I interrupted, my voice quieter now, but no less certain. You'd need antivirus software. You'd need a complete system reboot. And even then, Maya, even if you could somehow become a completely different person, I can't unknow what I know now. I can't unsee what I saw. Every time I close my eyes, I see you kissing him. Every time my phone buzzes, I remember you calling me about lubricant from another man's apartment. Every time someone mentions that club, I'll remember standing there like an idiot in my dad's shirt, holding an overpriced beer while my wife auditioned for a reality show about infidelity. I walked to the door, opened it, the universal signal that this conversation was over. You need to leave, Maya. We'll handle everything else through lawyers. Marcus already has the papers drawn up. You'll get them by the end of the week. She stood there for a moment, looking at me like she was waiting for me to change my mind, to pull her into a hug and tell her we'd figure it out. But I just stood there, hand on the door, waiting for her to go. Even then, watching her walk out, part of me felt bad. Then I remembered the video, still climbing in views, still being shared, still existing as permanent documentation of my humiliation. Nope, guilt gone. Door closed. Maya, in what can only be described as a commitment to denial that would impress even the most dedicated conspiracy theorists, insisted on seeing a doctor. Not just any doctor, mind you, but her gynecologist, Dr. Patricia Reynolds, a woman in her 50s who'd probably seen everything the human body could throw at her and had developed the kind of professional detachment that comes from spending your days dealing with people's most intimate problems. I know this because Maya called me 4 times on Wednesday morning demanding that I accompany her to this appointment, like I was some kind of emotional support husband who owed her the courtesy of sitting in a waiting room while she tried to build a medical case for why kissing Darren wasn't actually her fault. The first 3 calls I ignored, letting them go to voicemail where Maya left increasingly frantic messages about how she needed answers, needed to know what had happened to her body, needed me there, because apparently going to the doctor alone was somehow more traumatic than publicly destroying our marriage. The 4th call I answered, mostly because I was tired of my phone buzzing and disrupting my breakfast of champions, which was coffee and the lingering taste of regret. What, Maya? I said, not bothering with pleasantries because we were well past the point where I had to pretend to care about social niceties. Julian, please, I have an appointment with Dr. Reynolds at 2. I need you to come with me. I need someone there. I can't do this alone, and you're still my husband. Her voice had that desperate quality of someone who knows they're asking for something unreasonable, but is going to ask anyway, because what else do they have to lose? Still my husband. Technically true, though that still was doing a lot of heavy lifting considering I'd already met with Marcus and signed papers that would make this still a formerly within a matter of weeks. I should have said no. I should have told her that her medical appointments were no longer my responsibility, that she'd forfeited the right to ask me for support when she decided to tongue wrestle a gym bro in public. But curiosity got the better of me, that terrible human instinct to see how the story ends even when you already know it's going to be a disaster. Plus, a small, petty part of me wanted to be there when a medical professional confirmed what I already knew, that there was no conspiracy, no sabotage, just poor decisions and the consequences thereof. So I found myself at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon sitting in the waiting room of Women's Health Associates, a medical practice decorated in what I can only describe as aggressively calming colors, lots of mauves and teals that were supposed to make you feel relaxed, but instead made you feel like you were sitting inside someone's Pinterest board. The receptionist, a woman named Gloria according to her name tag, who had the kind of perfectly styled hair that suggested she woke up at 5 in the morning to achieve it, kept glancing at me with poorly concealed curiosity because I was apparently the only man in a waiting room full of women holding magazines about pregnancy and menopause. Maya sat next to me, fidgeting with her phone, occasionally sniffling in that way that suggested she was either still crying or wanted me to think she was still crying. We didn't talk. What was there to say? Hey, remember when our marriage imploded 4 days ago? Good times. The silence was punctuated only by the sound of a daytime talk show playing on the TV mounted in the corner, some segment about couples therapy that felt so on the nose, it was almost funny. After 15 minutes that felt like 15 hours, a nurse called Maya's name. The nurse, a younger woman probably in her late 20s with scrubs covered in cartoon cats, and the kind of cheerful demeanor that suggested she either loved her job or was very good at faking it, smiled at both of us. Maya Cross, Dr. Reynolds is ready for you. You can both come back. She said it like it was completely normal for a husband to accompany his wife to a gynecologist appointment that was specifically about what happened after said wife cheated on him. I followed them down a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and poor life choices, past examination rooms with closed doors hiding other people's medical dramas. Dr. Reynolds' office was exactly what you'd expect. Diplomas on the wall proving she'd gone to medical school and wasn't just making this up as she went along. A desk covered in papers, and one of those anatomical models that always made me uncomfortable because I never knew where to look. And two chairs facing her desk where Maya and I sat like we were meeting with a principal about our child's behavior, except the child was Maya, and the behavior was infidelity with a side of suspicious burning sensations. Dr. Reynolds, a woman with short gray hair and glasses that hung on a chain around her neck like she was permanently ready to examine something at a moment's notice, looked at Maya with the kind of professional concern that comes from years of practice. Maya, you mentioned on the phone that you experienced some concerning symptoms over the weekend. Walk me through exactly what happened. She had a notepad ready, pen poised, completely unaware that she was about to document the most absurd medical complaint of her career. Maya launched into her story, carefully edited to remove certain details like, I was at another man's apartment because I'd just publicly cheated on my husband. She talked about the burning sensation, the pain, the fear that something was seriously wrong, her conviction that someone had tampered with her personal items. Dr. Reynolds listened, nodding occasionally, making notes, her expression giving away absolutely nothing. I sat there trying to look supportive while internally composing the text I was going to send Marcus about this absolute circus. And you think someone may have contaminated your lubricant? Dr. Reynolds asked, and I had to give her credit for keeping a straight face while asking that question. Maya nodded vigorously, launching into a theory about how maybe someone at the club had spiked her drink or somehow accessed her purse, or maybe I had done something because, in her words, I don't know. Maybe he was angry I was having fun? She actually said this, in front of a doctor, suggested that I, her boring accountant husband who wore dad shirts and drank overpriced beer, had the foresight and malicious intent to sabotage her lubricant in anticipation of her cheating. Dr. Reynolds' eyes flicked to me briefly, and I swear I saw a glimmer of sympathy there, a woman-to-man acknowledgement that said, I'm sorry you're dealing with this level of crazy. She turned back to Maya. Did you bring the product with you? Maya produced from her purse a tube of something called Ignite Passion Warming Gel, in packaging so aggressively red and orange it looked like it might spontaneously combust. The warning label on the side, visible from across the desk, read in large letters, contains cinnamon oil extract, may cause intense warming sensation. Dr. Reynolds took the tube, examined it with the kind of thorough attention doctors give to evidence that's about to completely demolish a patient's theory, and then set it down on her desk with the gentleness of someone delivering bad news. Maya, she said, her voice professional, but with an undertone that suggested she was working very hard not to laugh. This is a warming gel. It's designed to create heat through cinnamon oil and other natural irritants. It's not your regular lubricant. The burning sensation you experienced was the product working exactly as intended. There's nothing wrong with it, and nobody tampered with it. You just used the wrong product. The silence in that office was deafening. I watched Maya's face go through several emotions in rapid succession: confusion, realization, embarrassment, and then desperately trying to find another explanation. But I didn't buy that, she protested. That must have been, oh. The realization hit her visibly, like watching someone get struck by lightning made entirely of their own stupidity. That was Sarah's. She left it here last month after girls' night. I must have grabbed it by mistake in the dark. That would explain it, Dr. Reynolds said, and I could see her biting the inside of her cheek, a telltale sign that she was trying very hard to maintain professional composure. Next time, I'd recommend turning on a light and reading the label before use. These warming products can be quite intense, especially when used in, shall we say, sensitive situations. The way she said sensitive situations, while carefully not looking at me, made it clear she'd connected the dots about why Maya had been using lubricant at all, and where, and with whom. I almost sent Dr. Reynolds flowers right then and there. Actually considered pulling out my phone and ordering a bouquet with a card that said, "Thank you for your service in the war against my wife's delusions." Maya tried to salvage something from this wreckage, turning to Dr. Reynolds with tears forming again. But see, it wasn't my fault. I grabbed the wrong thing. I didn't know. Someone should have labeled it better. Maya, I said, speaking for the first time since we'd entered the office. The label literally says warming gel in letters the size of my thumb, in bright red, with a warning, and a picture of what appears to be flames. I looked at Dr. Reynolds. The part where she grabbed the wrong tube and burned herself? That's not her fault. Fair enough. Nobody's perfect. But the part where she was in a position to need lubricant at another man's apartment at 2 in the morning? That part's still entirely on her. Dr. Reynolds coughed, a diplomatic cough that said, I'm a medical professional, and I'm not getting involved in your marital issues, but also, yeah, he's got a point. Even the nurse, who'd been standing quietly by the door presumably in case Maya needed an exam, was pressing her lips together, trying not to smile. I could see it. That universal human reaction to witnessing someone face the consequences of their own actions in the most absurdly specific way possible. Maya stood up abruptly, grabbing the tube of warming gel like it was evidence in a trial she'd just lost. This is humiliating, she said, which was rich coming from someone who'd been humiliated on a much larger scale just days earlier. I thought you'd be on my side, Julian. I thought you'd support me. She looked at Dr. Reynolds. Thank you for your time, she said with as much dignity as someone could muster while holding warming gel that had betrayed them. As we walked out, past Gloria the receptionist who definitely heard everything because these walls were thin and drama travels, I felt lighter somehow. Because this confirmation, this medical validation that Maya's burning sensation was just the universe's way of delivering instant karma wrapped in cinnamon oil, was exactly what I needed. Even the nurse caught my eye as we left and gave me the smallest nod, a gesture of solidarity that said, we all know what happened here, and we're rooting for you. If there's one thing modern society has perfected, it's the ability to turn other people's personal tragedies into entertainment that can be consumed while eating lunch or sitting on the toilet. By Thursday morning, my marriage had officially become content, the kind of viral story that people share with captions like, "This is wild," or "I can't believe this happened," while completely ignoring that there are actual human beings attached to this drama who have to wake up every morning and remember that yes, this really happened, and yes, everyone they've ever met has probably seen the video by now. Maya's friends, that collection of women who I'd spent 3 years making small talk with at birthday parties and tolerating at brunches where they took 16 photos of their avocado toast before anyone was allowed to eat, had apparently split into 2 distinct camps that were waging a very public war across multiple social media platforms. It was fascinating to watch, like observing a nature documentary about tribal warfare, except instead of fighting over territory, they were fighting over who could virtue signal the hardest about a situation they barely understood. Camp Sympathy, led by Maya's college roommate Jessica, who worked in human resources and had the kind of bleeding heart that made her cry at commercials for dog shelters, was posting things like, "Everyone makes mistakes." She was drunk and vulnerable. Poor Maya is going through so much right now. Let's show some compassion. Jessica had even created an Instagram story with one of those background templates that said, "Be kind," in flowing script over a picture of flowers, as if the real problem wasn't Maya's infidelity, but rather society's mean-spirited refusal to excuse it. Her post had attracted dozens of comments from other women who apparently believed that alcohol was a get-out-of-consequences-free card, and that feeling bad about your actions somehow canceled out the actions themselves. Then there was Camp Truth, spearheaded by Brittany, who worked with Maya at the marketing firm and had always struck me as the kind of person who said things like, "just being honest," before delivering devastating observations that were absolutely accurate but maybe didn't need to be said out loud. Brittany had quote-tweeted the video with the caption, "Nah, she was dancing like a Wi-Fi signal," all over the place skull, which had somehow gotten 20,000 likes and turned her into an accidental social media personality for approximately 15 minutes. Her comments section was filled with people either applauding her for speaking facts or calling her a terrible friend, and Brittany was responding to both with equal enthusiasm because she'd apparently decided that if Maya was going to make their friend group internet famous, she might as well lean into it. I discovered all of this because I'd made the catastrophic mistake of checking Twitter, that hellscape of opinions where everyone is an expert on everything and nuance goes to die. Someone had made a thread about the situation, one of those long, numbered tweet chains that people write when they have too much time and too many thoughts, breaking down the Julian Cross drama, like it was an episode of a reality TV show they were recapping for people who missed it. The thread had screenshots, timeline analysis, even a poll asking, was Maya wrong? Where somehow 12% of respondents had voted, no, she was just having fun, which made me lose even more faith in humanity than I'd already lost. My personal favorite development in the social media circus was Maya's friend Tanya, an influencer, with about 50,000 followers who posted content about relationships, self-love, and various other topics she was definitely not qualified to give advice about, given that she'd been engaged 3 times and married 0 times. Tanya had made a whole TikTok using our situation as inspiration for a video about trust in relationships, without actually naming us, but making it so obvious who she was talking about that people in the comments were linking to the original club video within minutes. I watched this TikTok while eating cereal directly from the box again, because apparently that was my depression meal now. Standing in my kitchen at 9 in the morning before work like this was a perfectly normal way to spend my Thursday. Tanya was sitting in what appeared to be her very carefully curated apartment, probably arranged specifically for filming, with that ring light that makes everyone look like they're glowing from within, talking to the camera with practiced sincerity about how relationships are built on trust. And sometimes people make mistakes, and we have to ask ourselves if we're willing to forgive those mistakes or if we're going to let one moment define everything. The whole thing was incredibly vague and incredibly specific at the same time. That particular skill influencers have perfected where they talk about real situations without technically talking about them, so they can maintain plausible deniability if anyone gets mad. She never said my name or Maya's name, but she described the situation in enough detail that anyone who'd seen the video knew exactly what she was referencing. Sometimes in relationships, Tanya said, looking directly into the camera with those big doe eyes that she definitely practiced in the mirror, one partner might go out and have a little too much fun and maybe cross some boundaries, and the other partner has to decide if they value the relationship more than their pride. Value the relationship more than my pride. Like my issue with Maya kissing another man was a pride problem and not a basic respect and human decency problem. Like I was being stubborn by not wanting to stay married to someone who'd made out with a stranger while I watched. The video had 1.3 million views, 15,000 comments, and had somehow become Tanya's most popular post ever, which meant she was essentially profiting off my misery. Her follower count had jumped by 10,000 overnight. She was gaining sponsors. My marriage ending was literally helping her career. I scrolled through the comments, which was masochistic, but also I couldn't look away, watching strangers debate my life like it was a hypothetical situation and not an actual thing happening to an actual person. He should forgive her. Relationships are hard. Not if my man did that, I'd be gone. Why was he even at the club if he didn't want her to have fun? That's not fun, that's cheating. Everyone's so judgmental. You don't know their relationship. We literally watched her cheat on video. What more do we need to know? Someone had commented, this is literally about it, Maya cross-marketing and her husband LMAO, with a link to Maya's Instagram. And that's when I discovered that Maya had made the spectacularly poor decision to post a public apology. Not a private conversation, not a heartfelt message to the people actually involved, but a full Instagram post with a black background and white text. The aesthetic choice of people who want you to know they're being serious, with a caption that must have taken her hours to write and still managed to miss the mark entirely. The post read, I want to address what happened last Friday night. I made a terrible mistake, one that I regret more than words can express. I was in a bad place mentally, I had too much to drink, and I acted in a way that doesn't reflect who I am or what I value. I hurt someone I love deeply, and I'm working on becoming a better person. I'm asking for privacy and understanding during this difficult time. Nobody's perfect, and I hope people can find it in their hearts to forgive mistakes. I'm human, just like everyone else. Red heart. I stared at this post for a solid minute, reading it over and over, each time finding new things wrong with it. I was in a bad place mentally. Convenient excuse that appeared nowhere in her behavior before or during the incident. I had too much to drink. The classic deflection, blame the alcohol instead of the person who chose to drink it. Nobody's perfect. Technically true, but also a phrase people only use when they've done something really bad and want to minimize it. And that heart emoji at the end, like a little punctuation mark of audacity. The comments section was exactly what you'd expect, a war zone where camp sympathy and Camp Truth were battling it out with civilians caught in the crossfire. We all make mistakes. Stay strong, girl. Two hearts. You didn't make a mistake, you made a choice. Praying for you during this hard time. This is the most non-apology apology I've ever seen. Girl, just say sorry and mean it. Nobody forced you to kiss that guy. Mental health matters. Stop judging. But then there was one comment, sitting at the top, because it had gotten so many likes that Instagram's algorithm had promoted it to featured status, that made me actually laugh out loud in my kitchen while holding a box of Frosted Flakes. Some user with the handle at Keeping It Real 247 had written, "Mistake? You practically live-streamed it, sis. That's not a mistake, that's a documentary. Movie camera. Internet. 1, Maya, 0. I screenshot that comment and sent it to Marcus, my lawyer friend who'd been providing both legal counsel and emotional support through this whole ordeal. He responded immediately with 3 crying laughing emojis and, "I'm printing this out and framing it." Even my coworker Tina, who'd apparently been following this drama with the dedication of someone watching their favorite TV show, texted me the same comment with Savage Skull, which was either very supportive or slightly inappropriate, but honestly at this point, I was just grateful people were on my side. The post kept getting more attention throughout the day. Each time I checked it, the comment count had grown. People were tagging their friends, sharing it to their stories, using it as a jumping-off point for their own relationship hot takes. Maya was getting exactly what she'd asked for in her caption, attention, but definitely not the kind she wanted. For every supportive comment, there were 5 calling out the non-apology, the victim mentality, the complete lack of actual accountability. By lunchtime, someone had made a meme using a screenshot of Maya's post, adding text that said, "When you get caught cheating, but make it aesthetic black heart sparkles," and it was making the rounds on Twitter with thousands of retweets. Someone else had created a parody account called Mistakes Were Made that was just posting other celebrities' apologies with commentary about how they were all better than Maya's. My marriage had officially transcended being just drama and had entered the realm of meme, that permanent internet archive where things live forever and get referenced in YouTube videos years later. I thought about texting Maya, telling her to delete the post, that she was just making things worse by trying to control the narrative. But then I remembered that managing her public image was no longer my job, that I'd been relieved of that duty the moment she decided to kiss Darren in front of cameras. If she wanted to keep digging this hole, keep posting things that the internet would tear apart, that was her choice. I had my own problems to deal with, like the fact that my boss had just walked by my desk and said, "Hang in there, champ," which meant even the people who signed my paychecks knew about my personal life. The weirdest part of this whole social media circus wasn't the comments or the memes or even Tanya's exploitative TikTok. It was the feeling of watching your life become content, seeing your actual pain and humiliation transformed into entertainment for people eating lunch at their desks or scrolling while waiting for the bus. Every share, every comment, every view on that original video was a reminder that my worst moment was now public property, something people could consume and discuss and have opinions about without ever considering that I was a real person who had to keep living after this moment passed. But you know what? At least the internet was honest about what happened. At least strangers on Twitter weren't trying to tell me it was just a mistake or that I should value the relationship over my pride. They saw the video, they called it what it was, and they moved on with their lives, which was exactly what I needed to do. A week later, I met Maya at a cafe called The Daily Grind, one of those hipster places where the coffee costs $8 and comes with a lecture about sustainability from a barista with a septum piercing and strong opinions about capitalism despite literally working for a corporation that sells overpriced beverages. I chose this location specifically because it was public, neutral territory where Maya couldn't make a scene without becoming the villain in yet another viral video, and also because they had decent coffee and I was going to need caffeine to get through this conversation without losing my mind. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table looking smaller somehow, deflated, like someone had let the air out of the confident woman I'd married. The Instagram apology hadn't gone well. The internet had thoroughly roasted her, and apparently reality was finally settling in. She had a cup of something that had probably been described as a handcrafted artisanal beverage, but looked like regular coffee with extra steps. And she was staring at it like it might contain answers to questions she hadn't figured out how to ask yet. I sat down across from her, pulled the manila envelope from my bag with the kind of dramatic flair usually reserved for murder mystery reveals, and slid it across the table. The divorce papers Marcus had prepared were inside, official and final, the legal documentation that would transform us from married couple to strangers who once shared an apartment and a catastrophically bad night at a club. "You're really doing this?" Maya asked, looking at the envelope like it was a bomb about to explode, which in a way it was, just a bomb that destroyed marriages instead of buildings. "Maya, you kissed a man, followed him home, and nearly burned down your dignity with warming gel you couldn't be bothered to read the label on." "Yes, I'm really doing this." I sipped my coffee, grateful for the bitter taste that matched my mood perfectly. She reached across the table for my hand, a gesture that might have worked a week ago, but now just felt manipulative, desperate, like she was trying to physically hold on to something that was already gone. "Can't we fix this?" Her voice cracked, tears forming again because apparently her tear ducts had become overactive since Friday night. "Therapy, counseling, anything? I'll do whatever it takes." I pulled my hand back, gentle but firm, establishing a boundary that should have existed before but definitely needed to exist now. "You'd need more than therapy. You'd need antivirus software. You'd need a complete personality reboot. And even then, Maya, I can't unknow what I know. Every time I'd look at you, I'd see you kissing him." She cried, reaching for napkins that were apparently decorative because they dissolved immediately upon contact with tears. Even I felt a bit bad watching her fall apart. Then I remembered the video views, 1.3 million and climbing. "Nope, guilt gone. Sign the papers, Maya. Let's end this with whatever dignity we have left." Months later, I was officially single again, and honestly, life was pretty damn good. Maya had moved out, deleted all her social media after the internet refused to forgive her non-apology, and apparently joined a meditation retreat in Bali. Fitting. Maybe the monks could teach her the difference between dancing and dry-humping strangers in public. As for me, I started laughing again, got a new apartment that didn't smell like betrayal and bad decisions, and adopted a dog named Mojo who was more loyal than my ex-wife ever was. I told my story on a podcast called Cheaters Anonymous, and the episode titled The Lubricant Incident went viral. Again, except this time I was in control of the narrative, getting paid for sponsorships, and turning my pain into profit like a true American. The podcast blew up, hit number 3 on the comedy charts, and suddenly people recognized me at coffee shops asking for relationship advice like I was some kind of guru instead of just a guy whose wife couldn't read warning labels. Now when people ask if I'd ever take Maya back, I smile and say, only if she reads the label first. The internet loved that line. So did I.